Welcome back to my channel. I am Trababalas and Zimbas. If you're watching this right now, hit that subscribe button. Do not be stingy like ZANU PF when it comes to sharing this country's wealth. Just one click, that's all I'm asking. Because today, we're diving into something that's going to blow your mind. We're talking about how Prophet Walter Magaya allegedly got trapped by Wicknell Chivayo, using a luxury car worth more than most Zimbabweans will see in 10 lifetimes. We're talking audio bugs, secret recordings, and a supposed prophet who allegedly couldn't see his own downfall coming. We're talking about the 2030 agenda, political surveillance, and how a Mercedes-Benz Maybach allegedly became a mobile confession booth. By the time we're done here, you'll understand why that expensive gift was allegedly the most dangerous thing Magaya ever accepted. So buckle up, get comfortable, maybe grab some tea. Because this story has more twist than a Zimbabwean road full of potholes. And trust me, you'll want to stick around until the end because the implications of this alleged trap go way beyond just two men. This is about power, control, and how the game is really played in Zimbabwe. Let's get into it. First, let me set the scene properly because you can't appreciate the magnitude of this alleged trap without understanding who these players are. On one side, we have Prophet Walter Magaya, the founder of PhD Ministries. Now, officially that stands for Prophetic Healing and Deliverance. But if you ask the cynics on the street, they'll tell you it really means pay him dearly. And honestly, when you look at how this man has built an empire, you start to wonder if maybe those cynics have a point. Magaya burst onto Zimbabwe's religious scene around 2012, and from day one, it was all about the miracles. HIV cures, infertility healings, you name it, he allegedly could fix it with his anointed oils and prayers. Remember that whole saga with the anointed maize? This man allegedly sold specially blessed maize seeds to farmers, promising them that if they planted these seeds, their harvest would multiply like something straight out of the Bible. Farmers bought into it, handed over their hard-earned money, planted those seeds with hope in their hearts, and what did they get? Regular corn. Just plain, ordinary corn. Their pockets were lighter, but their harvests were exactly what you'd expect from normal maize. Sarcasm alert, because nothing says man of God quite like selling overpriced corn seeds to struggling farmers. But here's the thing about Magaya. He's not just some street corner preacher. This man has built an empire. We're talking about a hotel in Waterfalls, Harare, a football club called Yada FC that he's poured millions into, church branches across Zimbabwe and even internationally. His services at places like Chitungwiza Aquatic Complex used to draw thousands of people, all paying their tithes and offerings, all contributing to the prophet's very comfortable lifestyle. And that's where the controversy really starts heating up. Because over the years, multiple people have accused Magaya of some very serious things. There was that case with South African actress Beverly Sibanda back in 2013, who accused him of rape during what was supposed to be a deliverance session. That case dragged on for years, allegedly with Magaya using his influence to delay proceedings. Then there are the fraud allegations. People claiming he sold fake HIV cures, which medical experts called not just fraudulent, but actually dangerous because sick people were allegedly abandoning real treatment for his anointed oils. But despite all these controversies, despite all these allegations that have swirled around him for over a decade, Magaya has thrived. His church has grown, his businesses have expanded, and most importantly for our story today, he's maintained a very cozy relationship with Zimbabwe's ruling party, ZANU PF. Publicly, Magaya has been one of President Emerson Mnangagwa's biggest cheerleaders in the religious community. When Mnangagwa came to power after the 2017 coup that removed Robert Mugabe, Magaya was right there calling it a new dispensation, hailing Mnangagwa as God-sent, talking about how Zimbabwe was on the brink of prosperity. He's shown up at party events, smiled for the cameras, and played the role of the loyal prophet backing the regime. Publicly, at least. And that phrase, publicly at least, is going to be very important as this story unfolds. Now let's talk about the other man in this alleged trap. Wicknell Chivayo. If Magaya is the prophet of questionable miracles, then Chivayo is the king of controversial deals. This man's name has been in Zimbabwe's headlines for years, and rarely for good reasons. Remember the Gwanda solar project? That massive scandal where Chivayo allegedly received millions of dollars from the government to build a solar power plant that would help solve Zimbabwe's electricity crisis? Yeah, that money disappeared faster than fuel at a Zimbabwean service station, and to this day there are no solar panels generating power in Gwanda. Critics say the man has deep connections to ZANU-PF bigwigs, connections that have allegedly helped him survive scandal after scandal, connections that have allegedly allowed him to secure government tenders while other business people struggle. But lately, Chivayo has been on what he calls a philanthropy spree. Starting around 2023 and really ramping up through 2024 and 2025, the man has been giving away luxury cars like they're party favors. Mercedes-Benzes, Range Rovers, top-of-the-line vehicles worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, handed out to musicians, pastors, influencers, even military officials. He calls it generosity, giving back to people who've contributed to Zimbabwe. But if you're a skeptic, and honestly in Zimbabwean politics you should always be a skeptic, you start asking questions. Why is a man who allegedly made his money through questionable government deals suddenly playing Santa Claus? Why are these gifts going specifically to people with influence, people with platforms, people with audiences? And here's where the conspiracy theory that's burning up social media comes in. What if these gifts aren't just gifts? What if they're allegedly something much more sinister? Which brings us to September 2025. That's when Wicknell Chivayo allegedly handed over not just any car, but a brand new 2025 Mercedes-Benz GLS 600 Maybach to prophet Walter Magaya. And just to make it even sweeter, he allegedly threw in $100,000 in cash. Let that sink in for a moment. A Maybach. We're talking about a vehicle that costs around $450,000. That's not a car, that's a house on wheels. That's generational wealth for most Zimbabwean families handed over like it's nothing. Magaya went public with this gift, posting videos and messages, thanking Chivayo, thanking the government, calling it recognition for his global ministry impact. The photos went viral. There's Magaya standing next to this gleaming machine, looking like he just won the lottery, like all his prayers had been answered in automotive form. But according to the theory that's now circulating across social media, that lottery ticket was allegedly rigged. That answered prayer allegedly came with a very expensive curse. Because the allegation, the claim that's got everyone talking, is that the Mercedes-Benz Maybach wasn't just a car. It was allegedly a mobile surveillance unit. It allegedly came equipped with hidden audio bugs, sophisticated listening devices designed to capture every word spoken inside that vehicle. Now, before you dismiss this as just another wild conspiracy theory, let's talk about the technical reality here. Modern luxury cars are essentially computers on wheels. They have dozens of electronic systems, multiple microphones built in for hands-free calling, voice commands, ambient noise cancellation. The infotainment systems in a vehicle like a Maybach are incredibly sophisticated. If someone with the right technical expertise and the right resources wanted to turn a luxury car into a surveillance device, it wouldn't be particularly difficult. You could hide miniature microphones in the dashboard, in the seats, in the door panels, in the ventilation system. These devices could be powered directly from the car's electrical system, meaning they'd work whenever the car's battery was active. Some could even allegedly be set up to record when the car is completely off, storing data and transmitting it when the car starts up again. The technology exists. Companies that supply intelligence agencies and security services around the world make devices exactly like this. They're small enough to be nearly undetectable, sophisticated enough to capture crystal clear audio even in a moving vehicle, and they can transmit data wirelessly via cellular networks or Bluetooth. In Zimbabwe, a country where surveillance of opposition figures and critics is well documented, the idea that state security or regime-connected individuals would use such technology isn't far-fetched. It's actually pretty much standard operating procedure. So, allegedly, here's what happened. The Maybach gets delivered to Magaya in September 2025. He's thrilled. He's honored. He feels like he's finally getting the recognition he deserves. And he starts using the car. Driving around Harare, going to meetings, having conversations. Maybe he's on phone calls with his advisors. Maybe he's chatting with his wife Tendai, who allegedly also received a separate luxury vehicle from Chivayo as part of the same gift package. Maybe he's meeting with fellow pastors or church leaders. And here's the thing about human psychology. When you're in what you perceive as your private space, in your own car that someone gave you as a gift, you let your guard down. You say things you wouldn't say in public. You express opinions you keep hidden when the cameras are rolling. You reveal who you really are. And allegedly, what Walter Magaya revealed in that car was that he's not actually the loyal ZANU-PF supporter he pretends to be in public. Allegedly, what he revealed was his true opinion about the regime's biggest current project, the push to keep President Mnangagwa in power until 2030. Let me break down this chart 2030 situation because it's absolutely central to understanding why Magaya would allegedly be targeted. President Emerson Mnangagwa is currently serving his second and, according to Zimbabwe's constitution, final term. That term is supposed to end in 2028. The Constitution limits presidents to 2 5-year terms, a provision that was actually put in place to prevent the kind of endless rule that Robert Mugabe maintained for decades. But in October 2025, just weeks after Magaya received his Maybach, ZANU-PF announced at party conferences that they plan to amend the Constitution to extend Mnangagwa's rule until 2030. They're calling it Vision 2030, packaging it as a development plan to transform Zimbabwe into an upper-middle-income economy. But critics, opposition parties, civil society groups, they're calling it exactly what it looks like: a power grab, an attempt to sidestep democratic term limits and keep one man in control indefinitely. This summer 2030 push has created divisions even within ZANU-PF. There are factions supporting it, loyalists who see their own power tied to Mnangagwa staying in charge. But there are also factions opposed to it. People who see it as bad for the party's image. People who have their own ambitions for 2028. People who remember what happened when Mugabe tried to cling to power forever. The public response has been mixed. Some Mnangagwa supporters genuinely believe in the Vision 2030 development agenda. But many Zimbabweans, exhausted by decades of economic crisis, hyperinflation, power cuts, water shortages, corruption, they're not buying it. They see it as more of the same. Politicians promising prosperity while delivering poverty. Leaders changing laws to suit themselves while ordinary people suffer. And here's where Prophet Walter Magaya's role becomes crucial. In Zimbabwean politics, religious leaders have enormous influence. When a prophet or pastor with hundreds of thousands of followers endorses a political agenda, it carries weight. It gives that agenda a kind of divine legitimacy. It tells believers that supporting this political position isn't just about politics. It's about doing God's will. Magaya, with his massive following at PhD Ministries, with his media presence, with his influence, especially among younger Zimbabweans, could theoretically be a huge asset to the Number 2030 campaign. If he got behind it publicly, preached about it, told his congregation that Mnangagwa's extended rule is part of God's plan, that would matter. That would move people. But what if, privately, Magaya doesn't actually support 2030? What if, behind closed doors in conversations he thinks are private, he's actually opposed to it? What if he thinks it's a bad idea? That it's going to damage Zimbabwe? That it's nonsense? That's exactly what the allegations circulating on social media claim. The word on the digital streets is that while driving around in his allegedly bugged Maybach, Magaya let his real opinion slip. Posts on X, formerly Twitter, suggest he called the number 2030 push rubbish or nonsense. Allegedly, he said things like, "They're blinding people with promises that will never materialize," or "I can't support this madness." Some accounts claim he even discussed alternative scenarios, mentioned younger leaders who should take over, expressed concerns that extending Mnangagwa's rule could lead to civil unrest. If those allegations are true, if those conversations were captured on the hidden devices allegedly planted in that Maybach, then suddenly the regime has a problem. They have a prominent religious supporter who's been publicly backing them but is privately undermining them. They have proof, allegedly recorded evidence, that one of their supposed allies is actually not an ally at all. And in authoritarian political systems, that kind of two-faced behavior, that kind of betrayal, it doesn't go unpunished. Which brings us to November 1st, 2025, just over a month after receiving his Maybach. Right after he'd finished hosting a month-long prayer crusade that drew thousands of attendees. Prophet Walter Magaya was arrested. Not just Magaya, but also his wife Tendai and several other individuals connected to his ministry. The charges? Multiple counts of rape and fraud, some of them dating all the way back to 2013. We're talking about allegations from women who claim Magaya sexually assaulted them during private deliverance sessions, using his position as a spiritual leader to abuse vulnerable people. We're talking about fraud charges related to his various miracle cures and business schemes. These are serious allegations, and if true, they represent genuine crimes that deserve prosecution. Victims of sexual assault deserve justice, no matter who the perpetrator is or how much power they have. But here's where the timing gets interesting. Here's where even people who believe Magaya probably is guilty of these things start raising their eyebrows. These allegations have been around for years. Beverly Sabanda's case from 2013 has been public knowledge for over a decade. There have been fraud complaints about the fake HIV cures, about the anointed maize, about various other schemes for years. Police have had files on Magaya allegedly sitting in their offices collecting dust. And yet nothing happened. Year after year, case after case, nothing stuck. Magaya kept operating, kept preaching, kept expanding his empire. But suddenly in November 2025, right after he allegedly made negative comments about number 2030 that were allegedly captured by bugs in his gift car, suddenly the police remember these old cases. Suddenly there's urgency. Suddenly arrests happen, remands are issued, court dates are set. Magaya and his co-accused are now in custody, remanded until mid-November as the cases proceed. The Zimbabwe Republic Police put out statements saying this is about justice for victims, about rule of law, about nobody being above accountability. And on paper, that sounds great. Justice should be blind, right? The powerful should face consequences just like everyone else. But this is Zimbabwe. This is a country where the justice system has been weaponized against political opponents and critics for decades. This is a country where corruption charges appear and disappear based on loyalty to the regime. This is a country where activists get arrested on dubious charges while connected individuals walk free despite clear evidence of wrongdoing. So when someone like Magaya, who's been dodging allegations for years, suddenly gets arrested right after allegedly speaking against the regime's most important current project, people connect the dots. They ask questions. They develop theories. And the theory that's gaining the most traction is this. The allegedly bugged Maybach was a loyalty test. Chivayo, acting allegedly on behalf of regime elements or security services, gave Magaya this incredibly expensive gift, knowing that Magaya would feel safe in it, would speak freely in it. The bugs captured Magaya's real views on November 2030. Those recordings made their way up the chain to people who matter. Those people realized they had a problem, a supposedly loyal prophet who's actually disloyal. So they activated Plan B. They pulled out the old case files, the rape allegations that had been sitting dormant, the fraud charges that had been ignored, and they weaponized them. Not primarily for justice, though if the allegations are true then justice would be a welcome side effect, but primarily to neutralize Magaya as a political factor. To send him a message. We know what you really think, and there are consequences. To send everyone else a message. This is what happens when you step out of line, even in your private conversations. Now I want to be absolutely clear here. I'm not saying Magaya is innocent of the crimes he's accused of. If he raped women, he should be in prison. If he defrauded vulnerable people, he should face consequences. The victims in these cases, if the allegations are true, deserve justice regardless of the political motivations behind the prosecution. But what I am saying is that the timing is suspicious. What I am saying is that in Zimbabwe's context, where the justice system has been used as a political weapon repeatedly, it's entirely reasonable to question whether these arrests happening right now, right after the alleged bugging situation, is pure coincidence or calculated revenge. Think about the broader pattern here. Wicknell Chivayo himself has faced serious corruption allegations. The Gwanda Solar Project scandal involved millions of dollars of public money. There was clear evidence, documented paper trails, whistleblowers coming forward, and what happened? The charges were dropped. Chivayo walked free. Why? The cynical answer, the answer that most Zimbabweans would give you, is that Chivayo has allegedly proven his loyalty to the right people. He's allegedly useful. He allegedly provides services, whether that's funneling money, distributing gifts that build networks of obligation, or yes, possibly even running surveillance operations. So he gets protection. The justice system doesn't touch him. Meanwhile, someone like Magaya, who also had protection for years while he was perceived as loyal, allegedly makes a few negative comments about November 2030 in what he thought was the privacy of his own car, and suddenly that protection evaporates. Suddenly the old cases come roaring back. It's not about justice in any consistent sense. It's about loyalty. It's about control. It's about what you're worth to the system versus what threat you pose to the system. Let's talk about the technical details of the alleged surveillance operation a bit more, because this is fascinating from an intelligence gathering perspective. If these allegations are true, this operation was sophisticated. We're not talking about someone hiding a cheap voice recorder under a seat. We're allegedly talking about professional-grade surveillance equipment, properly installed, probably by people with technical training, possibly even by people with connections to state security services. Modern surveillance microphones can be incredibly small, some no bigger than the tip of a pen. They can be hidden in places where you'd never think to look, behind the fabric of car seats, inside the plastic housing of air vents, embedded in the foam of the headliner, integrated into the wiring harness. In a luxury car like a Maybach, which already has multiple microphones for the car's own systems, adding a few extra ones would be almost impossible to detect without tearing the entire interior apart. And even if you did find them, unless you know what you're looking for, they might just look like part of the car's normal electronics. The power supply is easy. They just tap into the car's electrical system. The data transmission could work several ways. Some devices record locally and transmit when they connect to cellular networks. Others stream audio in real time over 4G or 5G. Some even use the car's own Wi-Fi or Bluetooth systems as transmission vectors. The point is, the technology to do this exists. It's commercially available to anyone with enough money and the right connections. And in Zimbabwe's context, where surveillance of perceived threats is common, it's entirely plausible that this is exactly what allegedly happened. Now let's think about this from Magaya's psychological perspective for a moment. Imagine you're him. You've just received a $450,000 car plus $100,000 in cash from a wealthy, connected businessman. You feel honored. You feel recognized. You feel like you're finally getting the respect you deserve. This incredible gift makes you feel secure, makes you feel like you're on the inside, like you're protected. So you use the car. You drive around in it. And because you feel safe, because you're in what you perceive as your private space, you let your guard down. Maybe you're stressed about pressure to support your 2030 publicly when privately you have doubts. Maybe someone you trust asks you what you really think, and you answer honestly. Because why wouldn't you? You're in your car, your gift, your space. And then, weeks later, you get arrested on charges you thought you'd managed to suppress or navigate around for years. And maybe, at some point, someone lets you know. Maybe directly, maybe through hints and whispers. That your car wasn't really a gift. That it was a trap. That they heard everything you said. That they know exactly where you stand. Can you imagine the psychological impact of that? The paranoia that would set in? Going back through every conversation you had in that car and wondering, who heard that? What damage was done? What did I say that I shouldn't have? This is psychological warfare as much as it's surveillance. Because even if the bugs were only in Magaya's car, even if only he was targeted, once this story gets out and people start talking about it, everyone Chivayo gave a car to starts wondering. All those musicians who received Mercedes-Benzes, all those pastors who got Range Rovers, all those influencers who were gifted luxury vehicles. They all start asking themselves, is my car bugged too? Have I said anything dangerous? Am I safe? And that fear, that paranoia, it changes behavior. People start self-censoring. They start assuming they're being monitored, even if they're not. They start only saying things they'd be comfortable with the regime hearing. And that's exactly the point. Authoritarian control doesn't require bugging everyone. It just requires making everyone think they might be bugged. Let's look at some comparative cases, because Zimbabwe isn't unique in using gifts as surveillance vectors. In Russia, there are documented cases of opposition figures receiving gifts that were later found to contain monitoring devices. In China, surveillance technology is so advanced and so pervasive that activists simply assume everything they say electronically is monitored. Even in Western democracies, there have been scandals involving law enforcement using gift devices as Trojan horses for surveillance. The tactic is effective because it exploits human psychology. We trust gifts. We associate them with positive intentions. The idea that someone would give you something expensive specifically to spy on you feels wrong somehow. Feels too cynical. But in political systems where information is power and loyalty is constantly being tested, it makes perfect sense. And here's another layer to consider. Chivayo's gifting spree hasn't just been about cars. He's allegedly given vehicles to military officials, to police brass, to government ministers. If even some percentage of those vehicles are allegedly equipped with surveillance equipment, then we're potentially talking about an intelligence network of enormous scope. A web of mobile listening devices, capturing conversations among influential figures across Zimbabwe's political, religious, entertainment, and military spheres. All of that information allegedly flowing back to someone, somewhere, being analyzed, being used to map alliances, identify potential threats, and maintain control. So if the regime suspects that a religious figure as influential as Magaya is privately opposed to number 2030, that's a strategic problem. They can't afford to have him potentially speaking against it or even just being lukewarm in his support. But they also can't just openly punish him for private opinions without looking authoritarian and heavy-handed. So allegedly, you use old criminal charges. You frame it as justice and rule of law. You let his arrest serve multiple purposes, removing him from the political chessboard, sending a warning to other potentially wavering supporters, and maybe even distracting public attention from number 2030 debates by filling the news with scandal about a fallen prophet. The cynical beauty of this alleged approach is that it's politically deniable. The government can say with a straight face that this has nothing to do with politics, it's simply about prosecuting crimes. And maybe it is. Maybe the timing is pure coincidence. Maybe police and prosecutors independently decided November 2025 was finally the right time to act on decade-old allegations. Maybe Magaya's number 2030 views had nothing to do with it. Maybe the car wasn't bugged at all and this whole theory is just creative pattern matching by conspiracy-minded people on social media. But even if this specific case turns out to be coincidence, the broader system of surveillance and control in Zimbabwe is real. The weaponization of the justice system against political threats is documented, and the chilling effect of this case, true or not, is already happening. Other religious leaders are watching what happened to Magaya and thinking twice about what they say privately. Other recipients of Chivayo's gifts are wondering if their cars are safe. Other potential critics are doing the math on whether speaking out is worth the risk of having their own skeletons dragged out of closets. So here's where we are. Prophet Walter Magaya sits in custody, facing serious charges that may be legitimate or may be weaponized or maybe both. His alleged bugged Maybach, assuming that's true, allegedly served its purpose, revealing his real position on number 2030 and providing the intelligence needed to target him. Wicknell Chivayo continues his gifting spree, continues operating despite his own legal controversies, allegedly protected by his connections and his usefulness. And the Narca 2030 push continues, with the regime working to consolidate support, silence critics, and extend Mnangagwa's rule beyond constitutional limits. For ordinary Zimbabweans watching all this unfold, it's yet another reminder that nothing in their country's politics is as it seems on the surface. Gifts aren't always gifts. Allies aren't always allies. Privacy is an illusion, and the powerful play games with rules that don't apply to them while prosecuting others selectively based on political convenience. Whether this specific alleged trap is real or not, the fact that it's believable tells you everything you need to know about trust, or the lack of it, in Zimbabwe's current political environment. The fact that people immediately connected those dots, the expensive car gift to the suspiciously timed arrest, shows how Zimbabweans understand their system to work. And the fact that similar patterns have played out before gives weight to this theory even without smoking gun evidence. So what's the takeaway from all of this? For Magaya, if the allegations against him are true, this could be the end of his career and potentially the beginning of a long prison sentence. If they're false or politically motivated, he's still facing a brutal legal battle that will drain resources and destroy reputation. For Chivayo, this alleged operation, if real, demonstrates his value to the regime and probably ensures his continued protection despite his own scandals. For Nature 2030, this case allegedly removes a potential obstacle and warns others to stay in line. And for Zimbabwe as a whole, it's another chapter in a long story of how power maintains itself. Through surveillance, selective prosecution, strategic gifts, and the constant message that nowhere is truly private, no one is truly safe, and loyalty is the only currency that matters. The walls have ears in Zimbabwe. Sometimes those ears are allegedly hidden in the luxury car someone just gave you. Sometimes that gift that looks like honor is actually a test. And sometimes, allegedly, a $500,000 Mercedes-Benz isn't transportation. It's a trap. I hope this breakdown has given you insights into not just this alleged scandal, but into how politics really works in Zimbabwe. The games being played aren't simple. The traps being set aren't obvious, and the cost of letting your guard down can be everything. If you found this analysis valuable, if this made you think, if you want more deep dives into the real stories behind the headlines, then smash that subscribe button. Don't be stingy like ZANU-PF hoarding this country's resources. Just one click to subscribe, and you'll be part of a community that's not afraid to ask hard questions and connect the dots others miss. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think this alleged trap is real, or is it just conspiracy thinking? What's your take on Thabur 2030? And most importantly, stay informed, stay critical, stay questioning everything. This is Trouble Ballas, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay sharp, Zimbabwe.